Good morning and welcome to Todd Clint's SharePoint podcast number 372, recorded live Tuesday, January 16th, 2018. I am your host and all bundled up today because it's cold, Todd Clint. And as always with me, making this thing as fun as it can be, Shane Young.
Hello, my name is Shane Young. I'm also bundled up because it's cold, but I'm also bundled up because it's like one of those stress blankets. My children have been out of school for days. They're out of school again today, and I'm about to lose my mind, so it's been rough.
The struggle is real. Absolutely. Yeah. And for me, I'm bundled up, but you'll notice I'm wearing like a very grunge sort of thing. So over the weekend, the lead singer from the Cranberries, Dolores O'Riordan, died. She's a big favorite here at the house. Long story, so I'm kind of all that for whatever reason. That's why I grabbed the shirt that I grabbed today, because it, you know.
I swear you're about to say she's a big fan of yours, and I was gonna be like, too soon, but you didn't. So good job.
No. So that's why I'm all dressed up like I'm living in Seattle in 1993.
That was a good time.
Yeah. So if you want to contact either of us, I'm on Twitter at Todd Clint. You can email me, Todd at toddclint.com. Shane, tell the folks how to get a hold of you.
At Shane's Cows. Can't forget that I love cows, so I keep the Twitter handle going live. Hit me up, the old bold zebras guys. Probably can't see them, but I'm pointing at them right now. And then the old YouTube channel, Shane Young Cloud, where I make videos that are actually work appropriate. It's unlike this show.
So you mentioned that they can't see them, and you can't see the view that we can see. I have unintentionally done this fun thing where bold zebras is cut off. The B is missing, and the ZE is missing. So your emblem says old bras.
This is why I can't get any business going, right? Right there. Todd's holding me down.
Yep, so you can reach out to Shane at oldbras.com. Totally unintentional. That is awesome. Yeah, don't touch anything. I think we've got our show title. So as for production notes, this is being recorded live on Tuesday. Next week will be Tuesday morning again, and then the week after that, we're going to try to move to Wednesday mornings. Who knows what fun and frivolity will find us there. But that is the plan.
Did you get the last one out in a timely fashion?
Yeah, not too bad. So we recorded that one on Tuesday. I kind of forgot about it. It came out on Friday. I could get these things out in a couple hours now with the PowerShell that I've got. I just forget about it.
I mean, Friday's a miracle. I want to pat you on the back for hitting Friday. So kudos to you. Kudos to you.
So I will get it out. So today is Tuesday. I promise to have it out in its entirety before close of business on Thursday. And that's Thursday of this week. So Thursday, Thursday, January 18th, 2018. I promise to have it. I have it out. So.
All right. Well, so speaking of you doing work and all the great things, I feel like the first topic is because you finally did something productive. We had to make that the first topic of the show. So Todd, tell the great people that you actually did something and what it was you did.
Yeah, and it's going to be a little anticlimactic, but I'm moving my blog, so I'm changing it to a different server. At this point, I'm not yet upgrading the actual software that my blog runs on, the venerable and loved SharePoint 2010. World-renowned as one of the best blogging platforms ever, far and wide by a man and child both. But I am moving it to a different server. That will do a couple of things. One of them, it will make it come down, crash less. So it's crashed twice in the last couple of months because SQL is having a lot of problems. And when I logged in, so it crashed here a week ago. When I logged in, there were 450 gigabytes of SQL error logs.
Good job.
So SQL Server has a rotating 6 error logs that it creates, and every time you start the instance up, it rolls one down, creates a new one. One of those, just one of those alone, was 146 gig of errors. That server is very unhappy. And so that server's been around for a few years. It needs a flush and a fill anyway. So I'm moving that to a new server, testing it right now. It seems to be working, so I need to commit and get that going. But the other thing that I'm going to do when I move it over is I'm going to move it over to HTTPS full time. I kind of played with that a couple of years ago and then forgot about it. Something shiny caught my attention. But you can, I think, if you go to HTTPS www.toddclint.com, you can see that running on the other server. And for now, it's up, but I got to swap some databases around and do some stuff. But that will hopefully be done in a week or so, and that will be moved off to the new platform. And then once I get that stabilized, then I'll work on upgrading it to SharePoint 2013, 2016, whatever.
Yeah, and as we've talked about before, right? For those of you that are like, man, why doesn't Todd just do this? He sells me consulting services. He's a pro at this. There's two big issues, right? One being Todd really wants to keep the comments and the ability for people to do anonymous comments, which none of the SharePoint platforms will support. And number two is we've got to protect those URLs. Mark in the chat room was just saying, we're going to re-ID everything. If we end up moving something and we end up that the loopback check is not post 107, that's gonna be really bad. Might as well just start over at that point and move to WordPress or something. So there's a lot of work to be done here that's very specific.
Yeah, and specifically SharePoint 20. So Shane's exactly right on both those things. SharePoint 2010 handled anonymous comments okay. 2013 loses its damn mind. It just can't handle a comment that doesn't have an owner that it knows. And if you think about SharePoint, as SharePoint has moved through its progressions over the last 12 or 14 years, they have really honed in on making content specific to you, whoever you are. So, audiences and search relevancy and all that. And so SharePoint now, more than it did, 8 years ago, really wants to know who you are. It doesn't like anonymous folks. And so every version that comes out hates anonymous access just a little bit more. They took it out of SharePoint Online a few years ago. And so I'm really trying to do something now that it wasn't meant to do. And that's what's causing me problems. I was talking to somebody else about it last week and going through all my tales of woe, the ID numbers and all that. And he's like, get rid of the comments. He's like, it sucks, but you got to do it. You got to upgrade it. You can't keep it on this platform. You can't, So I think that might have pushed me over. If I can't get the comments to come over, it might be collateral damage, unfortunately. But
well, the good news is Todd's about 10,000 comments behind on pruning out spam. So the spammers will be very sad. Maybe they'll fund the migration so they can keep all their links. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. That's a good question. But yeah, so that I when I rebuilt it one time here a couple of years ago, I forgot to set up the email alerts. And so I wasn't getting alerts when comments came through. And then by the time I realized what had happened, I was like 1,000 behind. And I'm like, and SharePoint 2010, if I remember correctly, will not easily allow you to delete multiple comments at the same time. Like it's not in a regular list where I can just go through and check them all. So it was like 7 clicks for every spam comment to delete it. And I'm like, I'm out. I need a college intern or something.
Well, you got your kids now, right? I mean, I think Lily should be ready to do this. So.
Absolutely. That's how they learn. So yeah, that's a good idea. I might do that.
All right.
So speaking of my blog, last week was Patch Tuesday, one of the happiest days here at the Clint household. And so all of the new SharePoint patches went out, 2010, 2013, 2016. And so you can get them now, toddclint.com/SP2010 builds, SP2013 builds, SP2016 builds. It's all out there. Also on Twitter, there's links there. So those are all fresh. I have not installed the January patches yet on any of my servers, I don't think. So I can't confirm or deny that there's good stuff in there. But
yeah, the SharePoint patches, they just keep rolling out, right? Whether or not we want them, whether or not we need them, they keep coming. So.
It's funny how that has evolved. So I remember when I first started this thing, it was first for SharePoint 2010. Because of my frustration of not being able to find that information for SharePoint 2007. And then they came out, every other month. So every other month it was one version of SharePoint. Now it's every month and it's 3 versions of SharePoint. It's gotten more work. Another thing for my kids to do.
See, you're getting the hang of this, especially if they're like mine. They never go to school anymore. They might as well get jobs.
Yeah, mine haven't been to school in years. Yeah.
All right. Well, so since now we're through the part of the show where we had to listen to all the things that you've done.
I've been a busy little bee.
Much more important is all the things I've done, which is 1. So just this morning, I released another video. It is Introduction to PowerApps Variables that used to have a link in the notes, but no longer has a link. How rude. But Introduction to PowerApps Variables. So just trying to continue to get people on board, right? So we got intro with SharePoint, intro with Excel, sending your first email, how the sort button works. And now I just want to do an overview of variables because there's a couple of key concepts there, and we'll spend a couple of seconds and talk about some of the concepts. One of them is that when we think of Power Apps, we kind of think of developments we think we must have and use variables. Well, it turns out that, PowerApps is actually a lot like Excel, and that you might not ever need variables, right? Because everything you do it in a field, which, if we're thinking of the Excel examples, we're doing it in a cell, and you can reference those fields or reference the cell from anywhere else in the app. So, the other nice thing with those cells is just like Excel, they auto update. So if you've got, two blocks, two inputs with numbers, and a third one that adds those numbers up, every time one of the inputs changes, it auto recalcs. So you're not ever having to manually say process or take this input. It does it on the fly. And then the place where the calculation's happening, you can just reference that directly. So not as many needs for variables as you think there is.
Interesting.
Yeah. So of course I say all that and people are like, yeah, whatever, teach me about variables. So I just keep going. And PowerApps, there's three different types of variables. There's contextual variables that are only available on the screen you're on. There's global variables, which are available globally. Kim Jong-un and his porta potty can use them. Yep. And then there are collection variables, which are, mini data sets, if you will. So I don't know, a lot of fun things. I talk about some of the pains I've had learning Power App variables and stuff, but it's just one of the solid videos to make sure you got firm footing as you guys start to do Power Apps. So I'd recommend it.
Well, I put it in the chat room. And for those of you that are listening to the audio only podcast, wise choice. Neither Shane or I are handsome men. But you can get all the links for everything that we talk about at toddclint.com/podcast372. So all of the links to the YouTube video, things like that. So I put the link in the chat room for that Power Apps variables one as well.
You're so sweet.
I am. You don't deserve me.
I don't.
So we are a couple of weeks into the whole Meltdown and Spectre fiasco. For those of you that have been living under a rock, that is the exploit that has hit Intel chips and Intel compatible chips, where potentially bad guys can use some speculative processing things to get access to memory they shouldn't be able to. I found a link today or yesterday that has all of the, or not all, but many of the manufacturers, Dell, HP, all that kind of stuff, links to patches and statements about what's compatible, what's not. And so that's on myitforum.com. Again, check the show notes. But that's something I've been going around patching everything. I've got tablets. I've got, I think in this house, there are 6 of us that live in this house, and we probably have 4 tablets per person in this house, if I had to guess. And as you can imagine, they don't all get day-to-day use, so I've been going around powering things up and patching and powering things up and patching.
Yeah, for those of you that missed it, there was a dark period where essentially every time a new tablet or mobile device came out, Todd Clint bought it. Sight unseen, just, oh, look, there's a new, buy. And so that's why everyone in his family has 4 or 5 tablets. He's assuming one day he'll have a dog, so he's got 4 or 5 tablets lined up for the dog. It's tough being Todd. He's got a lot of hardware in that joint.
Yeah. I mean, there are many problems with me. I have many faults. The list is long. And one of them is buying cheap tablets. So when Windows 8 first came out, the much maligned Windows 8, it had the big, the new start screen as opposed to the menu, and everybody hated it. But I remember the time thinking, for tablets, that is awesome. But the first Windows 8 tablets that came out were super expensive because Microsoft wanted the experience to be good. So you couldn't be underpowered. It had to have a camera, it had to have all these things. So they were super expensive, and I never got one. So Microsoft figured that out, and when Windows 8.1 came out, they loosened some of those, and so there was just this flood of cheap tablets that hit the market. And I'm like, I can finally get this tablet that I want, and I bought them all, every one of them. And so I've got tons of them. No exaggeration, on my desk right now, there are probably 3 tablets that were $150 or less that I've bought and not touched in months.
Oh, we got a lot of stuff. I would love to get on this rabbit hole and pick on you more, but we got too many topics, so I'm going to leave it alone and say, yes, you buy a lot.
So patch your stuff. Servers, desktops, tablets, all that. Check that page. This is a real deal, so patch your stuff. Go to that page.
Absolutely. So next up on the list here is I've actually been doing real work too. Very sad. And so for one of my new customers, I've got a VPN into them to do work on their SharePoint environment. And as part of that, I decided, all right, I'm going to set myself up a Windows VM and then do it all from a virtual machine. I'm using Hyper-V here on my local machine because supercomputer has 8 million gigs of RAM. So it's like, no problem. Excuse me. But so one of the problems I had was after I set it up, I installed the VPN software, right? It was Cisco AnyConnect. And it turns out that Cisco AnyConnect VPN software doesn't just work from Hyper-V VMs.
Really?
Oh, it was terrible. I was like, what's broken? And the error message you get back is VPN from a remote desktop is disabled. I'm like, oh, well, thankfully I was having a smart day and I pretty quickly guessed what that was. And it turns out that Hyper-V and their wonderful enhanced sessions that they now have made available, right? So you can just use the mouse, you can cut and paste, that type of stuff. Enhanced sessions manifest themselves as a remote desktop session. So the VPN software wasn't having it. So I had to go into my poor VPN or VM and say, go back to like it's 1995, no more enhanced sessions, no more jumping in here. Yeah.
Interesting.
It was sad. I got through the problem pretty quick, but just a reminder, everybody, if you are using Cisco AnyConnect VPN client, that the new Hyper-V enhanced sessions not compatible with it.
So as you were telling this story, I was thinking that's crap because I've absolutely done that, but I didn't have enhanced sessions on. So that's part of it. And the other thing is there are a couple of third-party VPN clients. ShrewSoft is one of them that I've used that is compatible with some Cisco VPN servers. And so I use that a lot too. And it doesn't have some of the restrictions that the Cisco AnyConnect client does. So that might be another thing. But that's interesting to know because I do the same thing. I VPN into a lot of different customer sites, so I can't install all those VPN things on my main machine. I've got VMs for that. So this is a good thing to know.
Yeah, it was it was a kind of a bummer, but I'm guessing if I was using VMware like most of the world, I probably would have never encountered this. But I figured, the Hyper-V stuff it's free, it's built in, it works really good. So why would I pay for VMware?
Yeah, and I'm the same deal. This machine here that we're on now has got like 32 gig of RAM and SSDs up one side and down the other, so that the I/O for VMs is fast and
yeah,
very
exactly.
usable.
All right.
In better news, well, that will be debated. Last week, Microsoft GA'd or made generally available PowerShell Core 6.0.
That sounds exciting.
Yes, well, but confusing. And longtime listeners of the show will know that Shane and I love ourselves some PowerShell, almost to a fault, almost in bad ways. So this should be a good thing, but it's a very big departure from the PowerShell that Shane and I have been loving on for the last 8 or 9 years. And so I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about what PowerShell Core is compared to PowerShell and why it's important and those kind of things. So first off, it is different than PowerShell. And Shane and I like to talk about how PowerShell really, it only goes by one name like Cher and Madonna and all that. But its full name was Windows PowerShell. It was owned by the Windows team back in the day, and it was a Windowsy thing. So PowerShell Core is PowerShell Core. The word Windows is not in the name anymore. And that's very deliberate. PowerShell Core so first let's talk about Windows PowerShell, and then we'll talk about what PowerShell Core is. So Windows PowerShell from the very beginning was built on top of the .NET framework, so the same framework that our friends, the developers, use to make C# things and all of that. It was only for Windows. That's all it ever ran on. And to run it, we would run PowerShell.exe, would open up the prompt or whatever, and we could do our things. And that's what PowerShell was. For now, and probably for eternity, 5.1 is the latest version of Windows PowerShell, and that is probably the last version of Windows PowerShell that we will see. So if you've got that, you've probably got the latest. So what is PowerShell Core? So PowerShell went open source here a year or two ago, and as part of Microsoft's vision on running the things on all of the things, PowerShell Core is built on top of .NET Core as opposed to .NET Framework, and so it's not a Windows-specific thing anymore. It runs on anything. It runs on Windows. It runs on Linux. It runs on my Raspberry Pis, which aren't sitting here anymore. Probably run on my microwave, Mac. Yeah, all those things. Runs on everything. And for compatibility reasons, and this is one that's going to trip me up. I hate the idea of this, but I know why they did it. With Windows PowerShell, you ran PowerShell by either opening up your prompt or running PowerShell.exe. PowerShell Core is now PWSH, SnagIt.exe as opposed to PowerShell.exe. And then on the Unixes and the Mac and all that, it's just PWSH. So why did they do that? Why did they make us fight all that? A big part of the reason is because Windows PowerShell and PowerShell Core can be installed side by side on Windows boxes, and probably will be, because there's a bunch of things, Windowsy things, that PowerShell Core can't do and might not ever be able to do. And so you're going to need Windows PowerShell to do those things. And to give you the ability to specify which environment your scripts run in, one is PowerShell.exe, one is PWSH.exe. The other reason is on Unixes, the different shells that you use are all something .sh. So CSH for the C shell, TCSH for the Turbo C shell, Bash, all those kind of things. So PWSH just really fit into that idea. Plus, I think there was already something out there in the Unix world called PowerShell. I think they couldn't just use that. So that's something that we're going to have to get used to, is when running PowerShell, running it as PWSH instead of PowerShell.
It all makes me so sad, right? I think my biggest problem with this is that, in order for them to get this out the door and make it available across all the platforms and all the things you talked about they had to do, but one of them is also, it's like our government, right? They had to bring it all the way down to the lowest common denominator. They had to make it so that instead of PowerShell being something that adults can use, now it's got to be something that a second grader can read.
Yeah.
And then, I'm sure, a year from now, 2 years from now, we'll get it all back. But, for example, and it's in your notes, so I'm jumping ahead, you can't do like snap-ins, right? So you can't do SharePoint with PWSH, but you can do it with the old PowerShell.
Yeah.
What about the PNP stuff? What about, all the commandlets, the community commandlets like get credentials that I use with the credential manager to stop from typing in passwords? None of that stuff is directly compatible with PWSH, right? PWSH is a brand new platform, a new tool set. There is no connecting the dots between it and PowerShell. It's not a migration. It's a start over with a lesser tool. I don't know. I looked at it. I got really frustrated, and I just turned it off. I'm like, I don't even care.
Yeah. So in the chat room and then in the post for this blog post, we've got a link to the blogs.msdn article that talks about it, about what PowerShell Core is and all that. And it lists the things that do not work in Core. And it specifies from a high level, things that use this particular technology won't work, things that use this particular technology won't work. But it also breaks it down as to what Microsoft-specific things won't work. So they've addressed this. The snap-ins is an interesting one. PowerShell Core will not ever support snap-ins. The good news about that is there is exactly one thing that I can think of that uses snap-ins, and that is SharePoint. Yep. And that is pure laziness on the SharePoint team. Like everything else in the world is a module, except SharePoint. And it's just because they haven't deemed it necessary to update that snap-in to a module. And so I think in this case, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe they will finally fix that and write it correctly as a module. But yeah, there are some things, and I agree. So this is one of those things I remember, 20 years ago when Java came out. They're like, Java will be cross-platform and it will run on everything. Write once, run everywhere. The only way that works is if you bring it all down to the lowest common denominator. Java can only do something if every operating system ever that it supports does that thing. And so, yeah, we are experiencing that with Core. You'll be able to do modules and all those kind of things. So stuff like the PNP commandlets, I haven't checked those, but I would guess they will be able to make their stuff work somehow with this.
And I guess that's the one I should go investigate because I understand how it works the best. But I would guess in my head, because they do everything via the client-side object model, and the client-side object model is probably different in the .NET framework versus .NET Core, I'm expecting that to be a monumental task, but I haven't done any research, so that is a guess. That is not a researched opinion.
Yeah, and the other thing is if they can't do it because of the client-side object model, you can keep using PowerShell. So there is that. So yeah, it's going to be a rough transition, certainly the case, but it is there. Like we just have to move to acceptance. It's the way it's going. They're not moving back from it. But this is an opportunity, Shane, for you to make some of your very popular PowerShell videos.
I was hoping, but I can't make a video and be like, this sucks.
This video will be very short. This sucks.
That actually might be a really popular video, right? Those are the ones that go viral. I just have some teenagers come in the background and be like, I hate PowerShell Core 6. Word to your mother. Right? That might be a way for me to, that might actually be a good idea.
You go with that. So another thing that was released, and this is out of order in the notes, but I think announced back at Ignite in September. I forget exactly when they announced this. The SharePoint team announced that they are providing a free migration tool to SharePoint Online. It's called the SharePoint Migration Tool. Cleverly titled. I have to give them credit for that. And this is a tool that will migrate you to SharePoint Online from on-prem SharePoint, from file shares, things like that. And that also went to general availability last week. So the good news about that is it is free, so you can try it out. And like Shane and I always talk about when we talk about doing upgrade migration talks, you don't have to use one tool for every aspect of your migration, from one version of SharePoint on-prem to another, or from whatever to SharePoint Online. You can break your content up into buckets. And so while the SharePoint migration tool is limited in what it can and can't do, there's a good chance that part of your content will fit into the free SharePoint migration tool bucket. So it's definitely worth spending a couple hours playing with and checking out. And that is on, again, the link's in the show notes, but blogs.technet.com has an article from Baer about that. You can grab that.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things I need to play with more. I have not pressed all the buttons on that yet, and I'd like to see what it can and can't do. You know, I've done a lot with the ShareGate tool and been very happy with it. And so I just wonder, is it 90% of that functionality? Is it 2% of that functionality? You know, where does it go? You know, I've wrote that PowerShell script to do a lot of the moves. And so where does that fit in the story, or is it just dead? You know, I should go learn more.
Yeah, it's a good play. That free download. Grab that. While we're talking about Bill Baer, Bill had a fun tweet. So for those of you that don't know Bill, he is the senior product manager for whatever marketing guy at Microsoft. Shane and I have known Bill forever. He tweeted a thing last week. He's got a goodie bag that's got like a OneDrive backpack, or not a backpack, but like a little stringed bag, or SharePoint or Yammer or something, and one of those god-awful, annoying, flying, screeching monkeys. And he's putting those up to, if you want to win one, if you tweet him your best SharePoint story, so if it's a tweet, it's got to be 280 characters or less, and that will give you a chance to win one of those bags and a pass to the SharePoint conference. Oh, I missed that. So link to the tweet. You can tweet him at WBaer, WBAER on Twitter. And they're going to decide that on February 1st. So get those out there.
Yeah. So Chris Webb in the chat room is very upset with you because he was hoping to keep us on the down low so he could win. So Chris, Todd apologizes.
Yeah, and one of my favorites, so when this came out, one of my favorite stories was, I forget the guy's last name, or first name. Berg is his last name. He was one of the guys that ran the SharePoint conference in 2011, and he was talking about his favorite SharePoint stories when he messed up Bill's travel for that and had Bill staying like 2.5 miles from the event.
I can't imagine how much whining he had to persevere through that one, but it was rough for him, I'm certain.
So I think he should win. So tweet your stories out at WBAER Bill Baer, and hopefully you win some cool stuff, even if you aren't Chris Webb. Talking about cool stuff, I had a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine, former coworker.
You have friends?
I have friends. I have lots of friends. There's you. This reminds me of our Scotland thing.
Yeah, my brother.
So 100 years ago, Shane and I were walking with one of our friends, coming back from a SharePoint of some variety. Much imbibing had happened, and this guy's from SharePoint, or from Scotland, and SharePoint. And we were talking about SharePoint or Scotland and its prevalence in something. And Shane's like, "Well, how many people are there even in Scotland?" And the guy's like, "Let me think. There's me, my brother." And we're like, "Oh my God, we're gonna be here forever." It was. Yeah.
I was looking for 1.2 million, 1.4 million. Not there's
something a little more succinct than that. So I forgot where I was at. Oh, so my friends, lots of them. There's you. But she was talking about asking some stuff about terminology. She's doing documentation for SharePoint Online, and she was asking what the official name for pieces of the interface were. and like the waffle and those kind of things. So I gave her all that, and then I'm like, I don't know if you used it or not, but but if you're not using SnagIt by TechSmith, you should check that out. And she's like, I know that it's out there, but I'm happy with print screen and MS Paint and all that. And I'm like, oh my God, girl. No, you're not. Oh my God.
Did you snap your fingers? No, girl.
Did the little head thing. And so I'm like, no, you got to check it out. And she's like, I hate to waste money. And I'm like, you are so not wasting money. If you are doing documentation as your job, my God, you need SnagIt by TechSmith. So I gave her the whole thing and proselytized all that. So I thought I would mention it here because it's a great tool. So the quick elevator speech for those of you listening is it has a 15-day trial. So if you go to techsmith.com, you can see that. They make a bunch of tools. SnagIt's the one that we're talking about. So go there, 15-day trial, fall in love with it, and it's the best $50 you'll ever spend if you ever take screenshots on a Windows box, just bar none.
Can you imagine? I don't even know how many years we've been using SnagIt. I mean, it's got to be 12.
Oh yeah. Longer than that for me. And I remember very specifically, I was in the same boat as this friend of mine. Somebody's like, "Oh, you should try this SnagIt thing." Back then, it was only like $20 or $30. That's how long ago it was. And I'm like, "Nah, I'm good with print screen and MS Paint." They're like, "No, this is much better." I'm like, "Well, I also know about alt print screen and MS Paint." They're like, "Oh my God!" And so I fought them, and then because I could not let that person know they were right. Clearly,
yep.
I couldn't. So I tried it, back home, and I'm like, "Oh my God, this thing is great!" And I've been a fan ever since. And one of the things that you brought up that I had never really thought about a long time ago was the screen capturing piece is amazing and does 100 things that I would never think of. But the editor is like the thing that I didn't think I would love so much. And so when her and I were talking about it, I'm like, I haven't fired up MS Paint in years. Like I can't even think of the last time I used MS Paint because the SnagIt editor is so fantastic. I used to edit everything, whether I created it in SnagIt or not.
Yeah, the editor, right? That to me is what I'm buying at this point, right? I can get screen captures different ways, but that editor and they added a whole bunch of new features, which I think we talked about 4 or 5 shows ago, but there's just so much there. It makes editing those images great because you got to make thumbnails for everything these days. You got to change, fonts and words, and there's a lot that goes into that. The other cool thing that I did that I don't think we ever talked about was I used it to make a GIF. One of those animated GIFs, whatever you call those stupid things.
Yep.
And that was super easy because someone was talking about doing it in Camtasia, and I'm like, that's really hard and complicated. But I could teach my mom how to make it with the SnagIt tool, make a GIF, an animated thing for my documentation. And so, I write a lot of stuff, write a lot of content, and I can't imagine life without TechSmith.
Yeah. So one of the new things they added in the new version of SnagIt is the OCR stuff inside of the editor. OCR stuff's been around forever. That's not new. But one of the things that I do, because I'm a big nerd, is I have a Raspberry Pi hooked up to a monitor that's got the weather and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that it has is the kids' school lunch menu for the next 2 days. So it's got the main course, the second, whatever. And I have to put all that into a Google Calendar, and I put it in manually every month because the school doesn't publish anything that does that. The school has a website that has that information, but the way that they have that, they have like a calendar view, and there's no text. I can't copy and paste it because I can't remember if it's an image or if it's Flash or whatever, but I can't highlight macaroni and cheese and paste it into Google thing. So what I used to do is on 2 monitors, I would have that damn thing on one monitor and the Google Calendar on another, and I would just type, every single thing for every day of school that they had. Of course, like you said, our kids never go to school anymore, so it's not so a big deal. But when this new version of SnagIt came out, that process dropped down to about 1/10 or 1/20 of its time because I would have that up. I would print screen a day in SnagIt. It would pop up in the editor because I would have that as automatically. And then I would just right-click on that, OCR, and then the text would just pop up and I would copy it and paste it over and then repeat for the next day. And so now instead of that thing taking me weeks to populate, the beginning of each month, I just do the whole month in about 20 minutes. And it's great.
But I want to get back to this whole idea that your kids, they have a main course. I mean, so is there like a main course and, and then do they have dessert? Do they have an appetizer? I mean, it sounds like your kids' lunch is a little more complicated than mine. My poor kids get fish treasure nuggets. I wouldn't eat a fish treasure nugget if you paid me $50.
So our school calls those fun lunches. So, fish nugget fun lunch. But they have like a primary offering, and then they have a secondary one for the picky kids that don't like the primary one. So I have to put both of those in. Yeah. So it's, but yeah, the SnagIt stuff, can't talk about it enough. Love those folks. Have to say, in the interest of being fully transparent, as a Microsoft MVP, I get free access to the TechSmith products. So I get my license for SnagIt and Camtasia for free. But the reason that I know that I've been using SnagIt more than 12 years is because I used to pay for it. So I've been using it longer than that. I used to pay them all the time. All right.
Yeah. Running out of time here. What do we got left?
So a couple more, and I'll take Jay, and then you can take Kay. One of the things, so Shane and I, big lovers of SharePoint Saturday events, been doing them forever. The SharePoint community is, I can't speak enough. Books could be written about the SharePoint community. Probably have already. But there was a SharePoint Saturday in San Diego last weekend, and Stephen Rose, one of the OneDrive product team guys from Microsoft, was down there doing a SharePoint Saturday, taking time out of his busy schedule. And he made mention that Microsoft was going to add this ability to do file restores to OneDrive. Yep. So this is kind of a cool thing. Number one, that if you were at the SharePoint Saturday, not only did you get all this great free SharePoint training, but folks from Microsoft are there, and you get the scoop. That might have been the first time that was talked about publicly. And so now, of course, everybody in the news picked up on it and all these kind of things. But this is for OneDrive for business. So not OneDrive for pleasure, but OneDrive for business. Sometime this month, this new feature is going to roll out, this file restore. So this is going to be the ability to bring back a file that has been deleted. So it's essentially a recycle bin sort of thing. And that will be coming out for individual files. And if you go into, if you've got your Office 365 subscription, and if you don't have one, goodness sakes, man, what are you waiting for? Go to portal.office.com, sign in as a tenant admin, and go to the message center. And yesterday, Microsoft released a message on that explains it all and when it's coming out and how it works and all that.
Yeah, and we talked about it in the past, right? This is a great answer to those viruses that lock your machine down, right? They take away all your files. All your files live out there. The bad guys encrypt all of them. You get the crap off your computer, and then you just say, "Hey, Microsoft, restore that back to where it was before they did the bad stuff."
Yeah.
Bammo whammo.
And they've already had versions, so versions would protect you from that because you can roll back. But yeah, so if any malicious process says, "Well, I'm not going to do versions," then screw those guys. I'm just going to delete them. We got that covered too. So this is just another one of the reasons that I love OneDrive. It does all these great things. They're constantly adding things to it. So this was another good one.
And so then finally, continuing on the All Microsoft show, because we've been some Microsoft fanboys for this episode. Saw an article over the weekend. Microsoft took more cloud share from their friends at AWS, right? So those of you that are like, I don't know if this Azure thing, Microsoft's really going to be a thing, AWS went from 68% of the cloud to 62% of the cloud, less than 2/3. Yay! But Microsoft went from 16% to 20%. Google made a small jump from 10 to 12. It's nothing catastrophic. AWS isn't like, man, we're going out of business tomorrow over this. But I just think it shows the momentum just keeps moving in the direction of us Microsoft fanboys and away from AWS. And I don't know if you've had a chance to really have to work on a project with AWS, but it is so much more complicated to use than the Azure stuff.
No, very, very little. All of my limited cloud experience has been with Microsoft stuff. So
it's good stuff. And so I don't know, just a good reminder, Microsoft keeps moving in the right direction. Should have bought Microsoft stock a while ago. It's got some more room to run, but it's good stuff.
Yeah, and I talked about this last week. I'm on the Azure train right now, and so I'm currently studying for exam 7533, which is the architecture, infrastructure, whatever one. So I'm bought in. I'm doing it. I'm SharePoint's still my first love, Office 365, but Azure, I got to know more about that. The lines between them are becoming blurrier and blurrier. So
yep,
I would recommend the same.
It's a year of Azure for you. It's a year of PowerApps for me. I'm still convinced, right? 2018, we get to the end of the year, everyone's gonna be like, well, this PowerApps, it's all new. It's all so cool. And I think the light bulb is going to come on this year for people. So
I hope so. I hope so.
All right, let's finish this up. Tell us about all the monies.
Yeah, so my birthday is Sunday. Of course, you all already know that. You've been saving up and all of those things. I don't need to tell you guys all about that. So that means we're coming up towards the end of the charity drive. And so this is a thing that we do every year where you give money to whatever charity you want, whatever charity is near and dear to you. I don't care. And then you tell Lori about it, Lori Gowan, our producer and all that. And we tally it all up and we get very excited about all the great things that we've done for humanity. So you can go to Lori's website, pointgowan.com/TK charity. And it just occurred to me, I should have a short URL on my site for that. Goodness, why have I not done that? And that's got all the information in there, how much we've raised over the years, how to contact her and all that kind of stuff. Any money that you do between now and Sunday will count, but they make a card and all that. So Lori would like to get those numbers in by tomorrow, which by tomorrow, I mean the day before this came out, probably. But a great thing. And the interesting thing about this was, while I'm the guy that promoted it, this was not even my idea. So Lori and Dan Usher 100 years ago, 9 years ago, I think was the first time they did this. Did this as to kind of encourage people to listen to this podcast that are probably, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have a decent, job and all that to think about, charity a little bit, and something that's near and dear to me. And I'm proud every year to be involved with it.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out with your birthday, Facebook keeps asking me if you're bringing friends together. I'm like, well, what, a hit squad? I mean, Facebook, quit prompting me to do bad things. I'm gonna sue you. You'll be part of my defense.
Yeah. But Your Honor, Mark Zuckerberg made me do it.
Exactly. It worked with the whole Eminem made me do it thing. So I might as well try it. Yeah. So then also, speaking of things that they made you do, you can tell people that Shane and Todd made you do this, but you need to get yourself to the SharePoint North America Conference, May 21st through 23rd in sunny Las Vegas. It is not -8 degrees in sunny Las Vegas.
God, no.
So, out there, you can learn all about SharePoint, Office 365, all the wonderful things that you want to do. You can do the day-long day camp with Todd and I.
Why wouldn't you? I mean, if you're going to be there anyway, goodness.
I know. I mean, craps tables or listen to us talk about crap for 8 hours. I don't know what you'd want to do.
I know where I'll be.
So, and if you use the referral code YOUNG, you get to save $50. If you use the referral code Clint, you are not permitted to sign up. So just keep that in mind.
See, I had read the stuff, and I thought if you use the referral code YOUNG, it actually cost you $10 more, and it increased your chances of getting the conference crud when you went home. I thought that was how that worked out. I'd have to look the fine print again. But
I mean, can you really get above 100% chance of getting it, though? Can you get it twice while you're there?
110%. We're giving 110% to giving you the conference crud. So, yeah, that is the event. And just this weekend, I had somebody hit me up on Twitter and say, hey, there's a bunch of different SharePoint conferences this year. My boss will only let me go to one. Which one should I go to? And I'm like, this is easy. You got to go to SPC NA. That's just, it's the one. The other ones are great. Don't get me wrong. I'm speaking at other ones. There are some great conferences out there. But if you get to go to one and you can go to any of them, this is the one to go to. So go to SharePoint NA, or I think SharePoint Conference. There's about 6 different URLs that get you there. But sign up for the SharePoint Conference. It's going to be, it's the SharePoint event of the year. So.
All right. Well, speaking of events, I think this event is over.
This event is done. Fini. So thanks, everybody. Chat room will stick around for a couple more minutes. Listen to your accolades, answer any questions that we might get. If you want to listen to us live next week, again, Tuesday morning, 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m., whatever crazy time zone Shane is in. And then the week after that, we're going to move to Wednesdays, I believe. So we'll keep you updated on that. Still looking at rebranding the podcast. Still need to get all the stuff involved with that. But we are here. And as always, hit us up on Twitter at Todd Clint, at Shane's Cows. Any of that kind of stuff.
Thanks and have a great day.
Thanks. See you next week.